Department of Truth, issue number 17. Once again, Tynan is taking us on a deviation. When are we getting back to the narrative at hand? Because I can't even remember what happened last. Cole was going back home. Hawk was taking him there. What happened from there? I don't even remember. That's how far it's been since we've really touched the actual plot line going through of all this. But you know what? I'm not going to complain because I think this issue in particular really was just Tynan just stepping back and being like, you know what? We've talked about a lot of stuff. We've referenced this at the beginning. What if we slowed down a minute and actually talked about, slowly talked about the moon landing? We've talked about it a bit. We brought it up in the first issue where we're like, hey, we're going to show you this weird video we took. That kind of became, public consciousness of these rumors and lies happening. Well, what if we really delved into that and talked about why we went that way? And for starters, we're going to meet the current head of the Department of Truth, none other than Mr. Frank Capra. And I'm like, oh, what? Frank Capra is in charge here? Why is Capra in charge? And for those of you who don't know, I'm sure a lot of you don't, Frank Capra is a legendary director of film from the glory days of the studio system, creating probably your grandparents' favorite movie. I love Capra. He's one of my favorite directors because he can just capture something so perfect in pretty much any genre he plays with, but there's just something so beautifully American about the work he makes, where it never comes across as this Americana piece of fiction. It's just more like, this is the world in its saturated form. He even says in this book, I was never the realist, okay? I really made something special. And that's kind of cool. So Capra is meeting with Richard Nixon, the currently elected president, the most recently elected president too. It's earlier on into the career of Nixon, and he's also there with Lee Harvey Oswald and this three famous men throughout the history of American culture together, talking about the events of what's unfolding in the world. And basically they catch Nixon up on the speed and everything happening with the Department of Truth. They start at the history of Adolf Hitler and his secret bunker, where they found all this information on these secret books dating back to the first millennium. And then it goes hey, the Romans knew about this, the Catholic Church knew about this, the British knew. But because we kind of did this weird thing, the Russians figured out about it too. So now the Soviets, they know a little thing or two about this, and they also have their own Department of Truth being built, called, was it the Ministry of Lies? Again, interesting time. What book were we just talking about that also delved into this idea of the Russian bad guy? It's very easy. I think there's going to be a time in history, and we're probably seeing it now. It's been throughout history too, because the Soviet Union, the USSR, all that stuff's been just perceived as evil. I think with today's current climate and everything going on, we're going to see the Soviet/Russian ideology become the enemy to the greatness that is the American dream. And I'm not going to say anything else on that. That's a whole other discussion we could get into, but we're not going to. Basically, what we're saying is the Ministry of Lies is the anti-Department of Truth. They are the Russian-Soviet equivalent of our perfect American body of system here. And basically, they have this idea in play that's going to destroy the American nationalism. It's going to ruin everything. What they said is we would become the failed capitalist dystopia that their propaganda perpetuates us to be, retroactively, and all that's ever been. We'd fall apart. The Russian powerhouse is so strong that the bear can take down the eagle in a heartbeat. So what we need to do is something so American, so beautifully perfect, that it all culminates together. And once again, because of that, we go back to the perfectness that is the era of the American dream presented by JFK. Because remember what JFK said, by the end of the millennia, we'll get a man on the moon. Or was it the decade? You know what I mean. Basically, you see Lee and Frank are we're going to tell you something right now. The Apollo 11 mission is likely to fail, but we're going to change the narrative on that and make something different. We cut to nighttime. We see Frank and Lee going through all these different reports on these people, and they're trying to figure out who can we get to make this vision work. And the person they're going to pick to fake the moon landing is none other than legendary Hollywood director Stanley Kubrick. So they're going to bring Kubrick on to film the, whatever the hell they're going to do to fake the moon landing, essentially setting up the American ideology that America did it. But in order to really preserve that narrative and make it look like this is an American achievement and not just something for the rest of the world, we have to supplement the American ideology inside of that. Thus, we need to put the American flag present inside that idea. So Lee comes up with the idea, well, let's just put an American flag on there. That's how people are going to know it's us. So if we just put a flag there, everything will be hunky-dory. People are going to remember who we are and what we do. And it's perfect. Because that's this book. That's everything we're doing, man. It's kind of cool. I really do like that. And it's kind of cool because Frank's starting to have doubts about this. He's like, I think Kennedy was right. You know, like, we've been spending so long trying to craft this perfect idea of the American dream, of like Americana, of like the perfect American world. And somewhere in the middle, we kind of got lost in the shuffle and we never actually got there. And the way we go about doing those things, are they going to be the right thing? Are we going to do any of it the correct way? And that kind of goes into the idea of Babylon and the Scarlet Woman and the Red Scarf. And what does she have to do with all these things? Is she the devil? Is she a princess of lies? What is she doing? What is she making this world do? And that's kind of, I guess, setting up what the rest of the story could be in the present timeline, where it's like, what is she doing, really? Because she comes to these events when pretty much the world shifts. But what does that mean exactly? What is the world shifting from? Very interesting, very cool. And then we see that Haynes shows up because he's still kind of scared of everything Lee's doing, because he thinks Lee's an enigma just like the Mothman and the Woman in Red. Which is he? That's kind of cool. I think there's something to be said about, like, you know, this fictional creature becoming the head of the Department of Truth, because that plays into a lot of the idea, and maybe that's why we don't actually see Lee die in the storyline. He's just older, he's more matured in this world. Maybe Lee cannot actually die, because as long as people believe he killed JFK, that's always going to be part of his narrative, and he can never really escape that. Just the further along he gets from actually doing it, the older his fiction gets. Could be kind of cool. Then we see, you know, just the one small step for man, one giant leap for mankind, and you just see the American flags can be planted there. Lee and Nixon are watching this. He's like, kid, I knew who you were from the get-go. Like, you were clearly something, and that's kind of impressive. And even that's just like, look, I've been around intelligence my whole life. I know everything going on with your kind. Good job, soldier. But it also kind of presents this idea that is very, very Nixon, and that is just, they're going to say this was JFK. They're going to thank Kennedy for getting us there because he said it. I'm so sick of that shit. And then you see that, seeing the power that the Department of Truth brings, Nixon wants to use that to rig the election to make himself the winner. Clearly, again, something this book has done really well, I should say. It's been very neutral in its politics. It has showed you that, like, oh yes, the Republican parties, you know, like the Reaganomics era is very much just like a destructive force that brought all this bad stuff onto the world, and like Nixon really corrupted the system and broke the American dream in this really disturbing, frightful way. It's very much leaning towards the American dream of JFK, but it's never been truly like, oh, it's conservative or it's liberal. It's just more like, this book is more about the positive affluentations of what, you know, JFK was trying to do, as opposed to, look how bitter and resentful the, you know, Reaganomics era is, or look what Nixon did to the pollution, or look what Bush did and all that stuff. Clearly, you know where Tynan's politics land, but it never affects the story, as opposed to some other books where clearly something like that is being pushed and you can feel it. The fact that this is about everything and encompasses everything makes it kind of more iconic, and I think that's very cool, and I do enjoy that aspect a little bit, just a little bit more than other parts where it could just be, oh yeah, look at how bad Nixon is. It's like, yes, Nixon is a bad guy, we're not supposed to like him or root for him, but we're also not going to make him out to be the villain here. He's going to use the system to corrupt things because that's what he does, but that's his character. We're not truly picking his side as monstrous. It's just, that is Nixon. That's all we have to show you. He decides Capra's getting a little too old, so he's going to have him retire, and then Lee's going to take over for him. It works pretty well. And then we see, like, the final pages of the book, we just see, like, the American flag on the moon, and in comes Babylon to look at it, and we get a nice final just reveal where she looks like she's holding the earth in her hand, just symbolizing that she is otherworldly, she is extraterrestrial in some sense, that she could be connected to the devil. Like the whole satanic panic thing happened earlier on in the book. Don't be surprised if this one has some connections to the devil and some long-awaited evil stuff going on there. Just a really fun book. And I talked about this a little bit in the last issue, where it seems like we're just deviating a little too much off the actual story we're telling, but I will always be there for Tynan just to completely uproot the American story and change into something else. So that's pretty cool. and I support that pretty much. I just hope we can slow it down a little bit and get back to the story at hand, just because I'm missing it. I feel like we are too far gone from it now, and we need to kind of go back to what Cole is up to, what Hawk Harrison is up to, what all those characters are doing. We got to see where they are, because it's been a while. So, the Department of Truth, issue number 17, I am going to give an 8 out of 10. Thank you guys for watching this review. Be sure to like and subscribe to the channel. As always, you can check me out on Instagram, TikTok, and Twitter. And I will catch you guys in the next one. Have fun. Stay safe. God bless America.